Welcome, everybody. We are live on this nice Saturday afternoon, episode 20, live from my drum room with my old buddy Dennis Chambers. Really excited to have Dennis here today. Hola. Good to see some folks watching already. Dennis is in the green room, the waiting room. We've just been catching up a little bit, telling some funny stories. So it's going to be a fun hang with my old friend. Yeah, cool. Thank you guys for all joining. So, right on time, so early. It's good to see everybody. It's 1 o'clock. We're going to start this show on time. I want to apologize in advance if the Wi-Fi seems a little sketchy. My wife is on a Zoom call upstairs, and it seems that with both of us doing this at the same time, there's maybe not enough broadband to we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I may have to go up and kick her off. We'll see. That could be interesting. All right. So anyway, nice to see you guys. Welcome everybody. And without further ado, please welcome the one and only Dennis Chambers. And there he is. Welcome, Maestro. I just gave you an introduction, Dennis, and I explained that my internet seems to be a little strange here. So hopefully it's not going to be sounds good on this end, says Ed Smith. Good. Okay. Good. All right. Let me know, guys, if it gets a little weird. I may have to go upstairs and who knows what, get into trouble.
Get hurt.
Get hurt. Exactly. We both know how that goes. So how are you, Dennis? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. I am just taking it easy and trying to stay out and away from people right now.
Yeah. Good move.
Which is hard to do because I love my friends and I can't see them. I can do video things like this, with them, but just like we all,
Yeah.
we have to
Yeah.
be very careful about who we're around. And in my situation, I have to be very, very careful. You know.
Right. Yeah. Yep. That's smart. that's and it's going to be that way for a little while longer, I think, till everybody, more people get vaccinated and this start to really knock this thing down, and then hopefully we'll be back to somewhat normal by the middle of the year, or the fall, like we talked about the other day, start to get
Yeah.
bands working
Yeah, I mean,
again
I
and
have I have
touring.
a tour set up for I have a tour set up for possibly for May and June, but I really don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, you mentioned that. And where is
I
that?
don't
Is
see it
that in
happening.
Europe? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, just based on kind of what we're seeing right now, and um, maybe they can postpone it till the fall, hopefully.
I mean maybe. I mean, what happened in 2020 was pushed back for 2021 this year, but um, and the stuff that was supposed to happen for me in January that got pushed off. The things that happened in February, like now, that's pushed off. I mean, because all the
Right.
stuff that I had last year was booked to this. I mean, for this year, and now they got to move all that stuff around. So now they're talking about, like I said, May and June, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
And
you're right. Yeah.
and of course, if they did the right thing, like other countries, like when you talk New Zealand, places like that, where they shut the country down. I mean, you can fly in there, but you have to be quarantined for a while. I think about 2 weeks, and then after that, you can do whatever you want. But
Hmm.
we didn't do that. and now they're like, for instance, like Serena, she's over in Australia, a full house.
Yeah. I know.
They
Yeah.
can have concerts over there. But for us, it's always about greed, money, 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 and money overrule for people to do the right thing.
Right.
It's like,
Yep.
I mean, when you first heard about this disease, it was supposed to be, came from China. Well, how it floated around everywhere is because people got on planes and they brought it to to other countries.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you
Yeah.
explain? Like, it's right here in Maryland. There's two cases of it.
I know. I know. Well, I'm just trying to stay positive. I know it's thinking that we could have another year of this is just, I'm just trying to, I don't want to think about it. I just want to hope and pray that people get out and get vaccinated, wear their masks, do the things we're talking about, just not getting around a lot of people and just, that's in 6 or 8 months, we'll knock this thing down to the point, maybe not completely, but to the point where, like you say, we can start doing what we consider to be normal things again, especially somebody like
Yeah,
yourself that, you make your living touring and it's just been so hard for you guys, the guys that are, the guys that are in professional musicians that have to tour all, in the summertime or throughout the year. So, yeah.
yeah,
Well, so I got to
yeah.
was thinking about this morning, our long history together. I started making some notes of things I just didn't want to forget to talk about because I'm already laughing at some of the stuff we'll get to. But um, no, but I know from knowing you for as long as I have, you started playing drums when you were around 4, right? Is that about right?
4 years old. Yeah, yeah,
4 years old,
yeah. 4 years
and
old. I still
and
remember
you were
those days. Oh, I remember some of it.
yeah, and you were playing gigs when you were
4 years
six
old.
years
I
old,
started,
right?
and then well, I started. I was about to say I started playing in clubs at the age of 6, and it was a club called the Peyton Place I used to play in, and a few other places around here, like Embassy Ballroom and stuff like that. And which is funny. It's like I remember I was always the oldest. I mean, I was always the youngest musician in the band, and now I'm like the oldest. How does that work, man?
That's pretty funny.
Like, yeah. I was known as little Dennis. They used to call me diapers and all that kind of stuff. And now I'm one of the oldest members.
That's pretty
But
funny.
I'm, playing in a lot of those clubs allow me to see and hear some of the great musicians that they were living legends then. And I saw Miles Davis when I was very young, and I saw Tony Williams with Miles, and I think that was right around the
Wow.
time they had just finished Miles Smiles record because they were playing Freedom Jazz Dance. And I remember that, and
So would that be
I didn't
around,
understand any of it. I mean, with Williams,
yeah,
I think that was 60,
7 or 8?
60, 67, yeah, somewhere in there.
Wow, man.
And man, Tony played like I didn't understand nothing he was doing. Then, but I still remember it because I mean, it had such a profound effect on me that I couldn't sleep for 48 hours after I saw it.
Right.
I never saw anybody like had a right hand, like his right hand, and then his left hand had a different zip code than everything else. You know,
Yeah. Yep.
and that his left foot it looked like a fish out of water. It was like just sliding around back and forth, left and right, left and right. And man, I mean, it sounded like it was Tony Williams' band featuring Miles Davis. That's what it sounded like.
Wow.
Yeah, but in groups like that, or by me able to play in these clubs and being around older musicians that hit me to a lot of things. Like, for me seeing, I mean, I was able to see Mahavishnu. I saw Mahavishnu twice with Billy, and I saw him once with Nada. I mean,
At,
when I first
like
saw
when
Vishnu,
you,
I mean, I thought Miles was great, which they were. And then you hear Lifetime, and that was great. And I never saw them. Well, actually, I saw Lifetime with Alan Holdsworth when he was in the band, but not their earlier Lifetime. But then when I saw Mahavishnu, man, it sounded like there was four lions in a cage, and the owner or the caretaker threw in a piece of meat. That's what it sounded like to me. And it was just unbelievable and loud, you know. Time
yeah,
signatures
yeah,
all over the place. You couldn't get a grasp on where one was, and then you had this mad guitar player who's playing like 64 notes that sound like 83 notes. Like he's breaking the speed record there, and
yeah,
everything is like that. It was like the equivalent to listening to um, Charlie Parker on guitar or something. But that was in a fusion way.
yeah, yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
What a
Then
time,
seeing
man,
Billy
to
with
be.
the when I saw
Yeah,
yeah, then I saw Billy when I first saw. Now here's the crazy thing: when I saw Billy Cobham and he was playing with Horace Silver.
wow, yeah,
First of all, he had the drum kit just like yours in the back there, left-handed set. No, no,
yeah,
wait a
yeah,
minute, no, he had it right-handed set up, but he led with the left hand. Um, and I thought that was great, but when I saw the Mahavishnu, I would not believe and refuse to believe that was the same guy. Because when I saw Mahavishnu, and we brought the records, but we saw them, and I'm looking. He looked like the guy, but it was like I didn't want to believe that was him because it's
because he
so
was playing
different
the
with
he was playing the big
yeah,
Fibes kit probably at that point,
yeah.
and
I mean,
yeah,
no,
the
no. When
whole
I first saw him, he was playing a Gretsch kit. He was playing a Gretsch kit, and it had a single bass drum then. Yeah, and then the second time I saw him, that's when it was like a dramatic difference. Same vibe, but it was just a difference because now he's got this big drum kit
yeah,
and he's kicking more butt. Like man, every time I saw this guy, he was like he was just sending me back to the drawing board, sending all of us back to the drawing board.
yeah,
So then you got Tony's doing his thing, and you got Billy doing his thing, and it's like, man, what a great time for drummer. And then you got Clyde Stubblefield and you know, Zigaboo Mona Lisa and David Garibaldi, like doing the funk thing, and it's like they were all just sending you back to school.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say it was an amazing time to be coming up as a drummer, to have all that music. I mean, we still have all that music, but to have all those influences and I didn't get to see all those guys live at that time as you did, but to be able to do that, to actually see them live would be, you know, it's
yeah, I mean,
it's
because
once in a lifetime.
hearing them on records is one thing, but hearing them on records is one thing, but when you go see them, it was even worse. I mean, they would do more damage to you seeing them live because you bought the record, you go like, okay, I got a handle on that, and then you see them live, and it's like they just blew your head off because they were like, I mean, like five times as good as you heard on the record,
Right.
and what you heard on the record, you thought was humanly as possible. I mean, it's just impossible to play like that, and then you see them live, and they're playing it even faster, and they're sitting there looking like they sitting there, they look like they're reading a newspaper. That's how comfortable they are doing it.
Looking like you, looking like you during the drum solo with the towel and the
All right, well,
chewing
that's where I got it from.
the bubble gum. Yeah.
I think
Oh
that's where I
man.
got it from. It was just because that was my surroundings. Everybody was looking cool and playing comfortable. They looked like like they're just sitting there reading a newspaper, and sitting there on the toilet, one go, straight. Yeah, never want to look like that.
Oh man. Yeah, I know. But you're right. All those guys that you talked about too, are, when you see them play, it's so effortless. Like it's just, you know, nobody ever feels like they're like out of their comfort zone. When you watch Tony play,
Yeah,
rest his soul, he was so relaxed the way he played. Just, you know, sat up straight.
yeah,
Billy, same way. David's got that kind of like, touch, that just soft touch that just like, it's like perfect.
But he looked like a mad. But he looked like a mad scientist. That's what I love about him. He looked like there was a guy on oh, Underdog, the mad
Oh,
scientist. Simon Says he looked like Simon Says when he's back there
yes.
behind the kit. But he's Simon Bar Sinister.
Simon Bar Sinister. Yeah,
David looked just
Simon
like that.
says.
He's just sitting there. Thinking about it. Right. Because he's sitting back there. You can see him thinking. He's thinking of all this crazy, nasty stuff to do to this song.
Yeah, yeah,
And kill him, man. I mean, like laying it down.
absolutely.
I'm
So,
just like,
so, so you went from playing in clubs, 6 years old. I mean, started playing professionally at 6, and then you joined P Funk, kind of like right out of high school, right? Basically.
well, see, when I joined, I was with well, Skeet Curtis. Rodney Skeet Curtis he was the guy who got me in the band. He and I used to play in a band called Uncle Remus, and which half of that band, some members of that band ended up with P Funk, but Skeet was trying to get me in the band the whole time while he was in the band, and every time the drum chair would open up, before he could get me in, somebody would take the chair. So George put a new offshoot band together called the Brides of Funkenstein,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and got me in that band. And I think I toured with them for like not even a year because the whole time we were on tour together with Funkadelic, Parliament Funkadelic, and somewhere I'd say about like within that year, somewhere halfway in that year, I was setting in with Funkadelic, and then from there George just stuck me behind the drums. Like you won't be playing with the Brides anymore. You're playing with us.
Yeah.
And I was thrilled. Little did I know, I didn't think about I'm going to be stuck behind the drums for 3 hours.
Right.
You know,
That's what you've told
three
me. Those
hour
shows were
gigs, sometimes
crazy
4 hour gigs.
shows. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Intense
yeah,
playing too. Like it.
and yeah, you're hitting hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with all that, you know, it was a little rough in the beginning, but just like anything else, you get used to it. And then all of a sudden, like 3 or 4 hours went by. The show is in. The show is at its end, and you sitting there thinking like, "Geez, man, I'm still ready to play."
Wow.
You still have energy to go do another 3 or 4 hours. You know?
When you're young,
But
you
that's
have
what
that kind
happens.
of adrenaline. Yeah.
So used to it. I mean, it's just like running. Jogging.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. Hey, Dennis, you got I just want to
Now
ask
you
you this
can't get me off the
question.
couch.
um, my pal Rich Farrago, just in light of us losing Chick this week, um, Rich was asking what it was like playing with Chick, and I was going to mention him a little later, but just any thoughts you want to share on working with Chick?
Yeah, I mean, Chick is a very. We were talking about him last night. I was on a video chat with Lenny White, Patrice Rushen, Mike Clark, and Buster Williams, and
Wow.
Vince Wilburn. We were all on the video chat talking
Yeah.
about Chick. But I mean, Chick, the guy. I mean, he was always about music, and all he was just very positive about everything, positive about life, positive about music, and I think he woke up every day and I think he just think about music every day, because whenever he can, and he would always be sitting at a piano playing something or writing something,
Mm.
and he was very very proud to the fact that he could play drums because he would let you know.
Yeah.
I remember doing a recording with Bob Berg's one of Bob Berg's record, and I had a little small jazz kit that I recorded with on that thing. And I said to him, I was like, man, I know you play snare drum, but can you play drum kit? And he sat behind the drums and started playing, and it sounded like Elvin, or like Roy Haynes, sort of.
Yeah.
I had to
Yeah.
snatch the sticks out of his hand and told him, get out of here, get off my drum kit, you know. But he very, very, very talented. I mean, we lost somebody important, really important, you know,
Yeah.
as a
Yep.
composer, as a writer, musician, everything. And he had a very serious love for all types of music, and that's why his music sounded the way it did.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. He came to
And,
Zildjian
and
once.
he was great at playing with other people. Say again, John.
No, sorry. I was just going to say he came to Zildjian once in the 90s. I was talking to Gad last night about this, and I don't know if, if it was Steve that set it up or it might have been Dave Weckl when Dave was working with him. But basically Chick called and wanted to come down and pick out a couple of cymbals and wanted to pay for them. We said, just come down, and we'll, because he has roots in Boston. He's from the Boston area. So he was in town, I think, visiting family. This had to be 25 years ago anyway. And like John King and Lenny DeMuzio and me and Colin were all there. And Armin might have been there too. I don't remember, but he came in and he was just so cool. We were all just like, like like on egg, not on eggshells, but he was so cool and so nice. But we were like nervous. We just wanted to make sure he found something that he liked. He sat down and played beautifully. Like you said, I mean, you could close your eyes, he could sound like Elvin. You could hear that he could get those phrasings. You know what I mean? And it wasn't like he was copying them; like he could really play.
Yeah,
He was really feeling that stuff. Um, and yeah, there's probably pictures somewhere of it, but yeah, it was a great day. Left with a couple of cymbals, really happy.
yeah,
Yeah, I think I saw him like one or two times after that, and you
yeah.
know, yeah. Hey, Adam Nussbaum. Adam,
He's definitely going to be missed.
yeah,
Adam,
yep. Hey, Dennis, do you know Bill Gibson plays drums with
Adam
Huey
gave me a
Lewis?
scare.
Adam gave you what?
Adam gave me a scare a few nights back. Man, he called me like five. I think it was an accident, or he thought maybe I was up or something. But I woke up and I saw it was him, and I thought something went wrong or something. And I called him back. He was just getting up, getting coffee. He's on his way to the doctor's office or something.
He's a man of mystery, that Adam Nussbaum. I accidentally, you're talking about Vince Wilburn. I butt dialed him the other day, like 7 o'clock in the morning, my time. And I saw it on my phone, a FaceTime, and I thought I missed the call from Vince when I got up that morning. But it turned out I must have. So then later that day, he Vince sends me a text and it says, butt dial with a question mark. And I said, yeah, sorry, man. Sorry, Vince, if you're watching this. But I was going to ask you if you know Bill Gibson, drummer with Huey Lewis in the News. Have you ever met Bill?
I think I met him one time.
Yeah, he's on watch and he says hello, and I thought you might have met him. He's a really great guy and a really really great drummer.
Yeah, tell him I said hello. Hello.
Yeah. Dennis
Yeah.
says hello, Bill. I say hello, buddy. So I was thinking back. I've been since this week since we talked about doing this. When when um, when you and when I first met you or got to know you over the phone, I was working for DW. I don't know if you remember that, but um, you were playing with John
I remember
Scofield.
that.
It was probably you remember that, yeah. And I was I'll tell everybody watching I was a dumb a dumb knucklehead because I really didn't know who Dennis was at the time. I think the first time I talked to you on the phone, and I think it was not long after that because you were playing the DW pedals. And it wasn't long after that that I read an interview. It might have been with Vinny or somebody, and you had just done Blue Matter. You had just recorded Scofield's Blue Matter record, and I went out and got it. And and then we talked on the phone another time, and I'm like, okay, now I know who this guy is. But you had actually hooked up a bunch of guys with DW that I wasn't aware of at the time, like Omar and maybe even Kenwood Denard, and just some guys that you knew from the scene that you kind of, you know, turned on. But what I'm getting at with this story is I was living out in LA. I moved back to Boston, got the job at Zildjian. And I remember the first time I went to see you play, I was with Lenny and Colin. You were playing, I think, the Regatta Bar or maybe the old Night Stage in Cambridge. Remember that place? I think you might have
Nice
played.
page, yeah.
Yeah, you played, but I think it was the Regatta Bar, and it was Bob Berg and Mike Stern. It was like that band they had where they were like co-leaders or whatever. Um, I don't know who was playing bass at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
This would have been
Lincoln
1989.
Gomes.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
Lincoln Goins. Yeah,
it was Lincoln.
yep. And I remember driving to the gig with Colin and Lenny and Colin, you know, and I said, yeah, I know Dennis. We've talked on the phone and, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm excited to meet him. And I remember Colin saying to me, so but this will be the first time you've seen him play. And I said, yeah. And he's like, okay. And, you know, he was watching me watch you throughout the night. Because, and not to say that it's any less impactful the second or third or 100th time anybody sees you play, but that first time, I'll never forget it because to this day there was, and I've seen Billy Cobham play a few times, and Billy is, but seeing you play was like otherworldly. It was like nothing I'd ever seen in my life. It's, you know, not even just the drum solo part, but just like the playing part. And I remember there was a point in the night, and I think you'll remember this. Lenny yelled out, I think it was during your solo, Lenny DeMuzio yells, pay him more money, Bob. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
I remember that.
Yeah,
I
pay
remember
him,
that.
yeah, pay him more money. Like it's like all you can hear. It's like really quiet. The room's dead quiet, and you're just doing your like the hi hat thing and the you know the double bass drum.
Right.
And the first time anybody hears you play that is like a total mind f because you're like, whoa, wait a minute, how is he playing eighth notes in the hi hat and you know triplets on the bass drum or you know single strokes on the bass drum and but so you're just hearing that quiet like pay him more money, Bob. Oh man, life changing. But in that same year, and I'm just where I'm going with this whole thing is that that same year was the year you played on the Buddy Rich Memorial in LA, the second show at the Wiltern in LA in October of that year. And that, would you say that was kind of a almost like a turning point where like plenty of people knew who you were before that, but after that, that because of the video that Hudson or DCI made at the time, because I know working at Zildjian, all of a sudden, all our
I think.
dealers, all the, sorry, go ahead, get that weird
No, no, go
delay.
ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I feel like it was like right after that video came out, or even not when people saw you at that show, it's just, we had a flood of like music dealers saying, we got to get him in our store for a clinic. We got to, you know, you were doing clinics before that, but that was like, that opened it to the masses. Like everybody was, you know, so what's your recollection? I know it was a long time ago. It was 30 something years ago.
No, I think the Buddy Rich Memorial was like more or less like a stamp like I was official that I was one of the guys, I guess. I mean, because like you said, I mean, a lot of people knew me.
Yeah.
The drummers, the important drummers knew me, but it was just all the like across the country. There was a lot of other drummers that did about me, or I mean, they were Scofield fans, and the
Right.
Scofield fans were turning other people on to me. Then they were going back to look at my Parliament Funkadelic days. But that Buddy Rich Memorial, that was like more of that was a stamp of approval that there was a new sheriff in town, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, sitting in the audience that night at the Buddy Rich thing, I just, we had invited a bunch of LA drummers to come, kind of be our guests. And, we had like a whole section, and Armin was sitting there with us. And that was exactly what it was. It was like there were a lot of guys who had heard your name, but maybe had never seen you play. And that was a huge, that was what everybody was talking about. Because they, I mean, everybody played amazing that night, but everybody had seen Steve play, had seen Vinny play, had seen Dave play at one time or another. But there were like a lot of people that had like knew who you were and maybe had heard you on a record or heard you on records, but the performance, the when you played with Greg and Louie, that was amazing. And
Yeah,
and I was just going to say
yeah,
too, I was thinking,
it was great, man.
yeah, yeah. I
I'm
don't know
sorry.
if
Yeah, it
Hudson,
is.
yeah, there's a weird delay. This is, I think my wife used up all the, oh, there's my son, John Jr. Everyone remembers their first time. I brought him to see you at the Regatta Bar back. He might remember, we were talking about this recently, but I brought him to see you, and he had my Gretsch set at the time, and I told you that he had those aquamarine Gretsch drums, Aqua Flame, and you said to him, don't you ever get rid of those drums or something like that. And he was like, okay. Like I had told him that, but he didn't listen. But when you told him, he was like, okay.
Right, right. Right.
No, I was just gonna
You don't know
just
what you have. That's cool.
I know. But just to jump back to that Buddy Rich thing, I was gonna say that afternoon, um, what people probably don't understand or don't realize is that you and Louie and Greg, I think you guys played like you like were just jamming. The three of you guys played for like 2 hours. Do you remember that? Like you guys, it was supposed to be a sound check and you were going to work some stuff out for the show that night.
Yeah.
And you guys, I mean, I just remember sitting there going, and it it never got boring. It was just like the three of you guys just playing. And Louis was kind of holding back. Louis was just kind of saving his bullets for that night, But
Yeah.
but that hopefully some of
But
that's
it
on
was
video.
six of us. It was six of us that played.
Were all six of you guys swapping, like trading fours that day? Okay, it was everybody.
Yeah,
Okay,
because it was like because I was on the side. I remember looking at Vinny to look at the rest of the guys, and like you said, it was at a sound check, and we just happened to be all on stage. I think we were all like tested, like pulling in the pieces and making sure everything's in the right place, and then we just started playing.
yeah,
And then
yep,
next thing I know, we were like in the like we were all going at it, like. And Vinny, his crazy self, he just can't be outdone. Like every time you throw something up there, he just answer it, and then he play you one even better. Like with the answer. And of course, that challenged everybody else to upstep their game. Meanwhile, Louis is sitting back here like, you're right. you know. But yeah, yeah,
uh,
we were all stoked, man. By the time it got around to doing the show, I remember I had to go change my clothes, and my clothes was wet.
yeah, yeah.
Messing around with Vinny.
I was afraid you guys weren't going to have anything left for that night. I really was. I was like, man, like how are they how are they going to play this show tonight? They've just played like three shows in the time that we've been sitting here, But it was pretty amazing.
I think
Wow.
I'm not sure, but I think Bud Bissonnette, Greg's father, he had a video camera. I think he filmed it.
Probably
And
right.
I've been
Yeah.
telling some people there's video footage somewhere. There were a few guys with cameras, and I
Yeah.
Arnold had he remembered he walked in, he saw us play, and he stood there for a while. And then all of a sudden, he had this shocked look on his face, and he ran off, and he came back with a camera. But when I asked him about it, he says, "No, he don't have that footage anymore.
I wonder if
He don't know
Hudson,
where it went. He don't know if
yeah. And the DCI guys, I wonder if Rob and Paul have it somewhere, like in their archives, like if they, I should ask Rob Wallace if they have any of that footage from that afternoon.
I don't think I don't think they would have it unless somebody actually turned the cameras on. But I don't remember them recording.
Hmm.
Because after all,
Wow.
it was just a sound check, unless they were documenting the sound check or something.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Which they probably weren't doing back then. I mean, nowadays everybody gets all that stuff now. That's part of the whole extra um, DVD stuff. But yeah, maybe back then it was just because it would have cost a lot of money to use that much tape. Maybe they uh, they just got the show. Yeah, good point. Um, let's see. Well, I got a couple
Yeah.
more things I want to test your memory on. Not test your memory, but you got a great memory. Talked about Buddy Rich. I remember when you got the call to do the Steely Dan tour, and I know that a lot of the people watching this are big Steely Dan fans, as we all are, and for a band that relied so much on like charts and guys that read music, and you don't read pretty much, right? I mean, I know you can read a little bit, but in that situation,
Yeah.
maybe talk about the process to get that, to learn that show, because they just asked you to join the band, right? There wasn't like an audition.
Well, I mean, for me, it was just like any other band, as far as the reading part, because I don't read music. They just send me a tape, uh, and that situation, I think I got like, man, I think I got their whole book. They sent me the whole book of music on CDs or cassettes or something,
Yeah.
and I had to learn all that music because they weren't sure what they were going to play for the tour. And in some places, how they had it worked out was we had one show for the new places that they were going, and then we had another show for the places that they already been with Peter,
Mm.
um, where they been before, and just played a different show. And in some places, we played both shows. It had a little intermission, in between things, and then we played the other thing. But that was all weird and funny how that all worked out. I remember, um, talking to Jeff Porcaro and everybody who played or did the recordings or played with him, and everybody had like crazier things to say, about the band, and kind of made me nervous going in there. And we had a week of rehearsal at SRR in New York, and we didn't see Walter and Donald until the last 2 or 3 days before rehearsals were over with. And so I don't know what Donald looked like. I didn't know what Walter looked like. And one day, in fact, Walter showed up first. He just walked out on stage with a guitar and just started playing with us. I'm like, well, I guess that's Walter. And Donald shows up, and now Donald's, this was weird because he came in, he stood at the door, was back to the door, and I'm playing, we're playing, and I'm looking at this guy who's standing way in the back there by the door. He's got like a black leather jacket with shades, and then he started scaling the wall with his back, like tight to the wall, just sliding down the wall. So he's going from, and I'm looking at him. We're playing. Nobody said a word. I'm trying to figure out like who is this guy. And then he went from he's over in the corner. I could see him, and then he started coming towards us, but his back to the wall. And then next thing you know, he's up on stage, and then he sit at the Fender Rhodes, and he started playing, and we played about I say about four numbers or three numbers or something like that. And then he turned around and says, "Hi, Dennis. I'm. I was like, man, that was weird. He was like, I'm down on favorite, and I'm looking at him. Well, I guess all right, because like anybody else, somebody else would have came in there like that. They would have been thrown out of that place. But and from then, I don't. They never said more than three words to me, and I was expecting the worst.
Yeah.
You know, I remember Carol was telling me. He said they were in the middle of a session or something, and I think after like 20 something takes on this one song, and they all sounded perfect. I mean, he played it the same way, every time. And then they wanted to do another take, and he's, he said he went up. He's like, "Hold on a second, let me get a cigarette smoke." He went and smoked the cigarette, and he came back. And he looked at the chart, and they were getting ready to, get the tape rolling. And he says, "You ready?" And he sit there, and he had his hands, and he looked up, and then he picked up a pair of drumsticks and shoved his sticks through the snare drum head
I heard this
and
story.
said, "Get a take out of that. I'm out of here." See, stuff like that made me nervous when I did that.
Yeah.
But
Tape rolling, great.
they didn't say no more than two words. Right, right, right. Get a take out of that. I'm out.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
I think the only thing that I remember they saying anything. Well, actually, on the Asia solo, when I would do this Asia thing, I would try to copy it, lick for lick, sorta like Gad, because hey man, Gad, that's a whole nother part of the way that song sounded the way it did, that feel, So I had to do that, but I
yeah.
had it down to the stick click,
I
that
remember. Yeah.
dang,
Yeah.
so, so I would do that, and Walter heard it. Walter like turned around and he said he thought when he first heard it, he thought I was like hitting a microphone, and like every night he thought I was hitting that same microphone all the time until he turned around
Oh,
and looked, and he saw me go dip, you know. So at sound check, he asked me about it, like, why you stick like that? Da, 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 da. I'm like, well, that's what Gad did. I don't know if he clicked it, but if that was an accident or but he did that in the solo. And he listened to it. He's like, holy moly, you're right. You know,
you'd never heard that
he loved
before?
that out. Every night he would like. Every,
Yeah.
well, I guess not.
Wow.
But every night he would turn around and he would point, dig.
Yeah.
But there was one night I got tired of. I figured I'm going to do the Dennis Chambers drum solo on Asia. This is funny. So we're playing fanfare going into Asia, and I'm playing, and I had to tell my drum tech something, and I didn't want to yell in his ear, so I grabbed his jaws and I pulled him to me close, and I'm telling him like what I needed, but there was a drum fill coming up, and we're playing, and I remember, so I did the drum fill with one hand,
Yeah.
and I look over to the left, off in the wings of the stage. I see somebody freaking out over there, jumping up and down, jumping up and down, and I'm looking, and it was Donald. Now Donald is, he's a very controlled person.
Yeah.
You know, and when he put on the shades, he's another guy. But
Yeah.
like shades off, he's more lifelike or something. But he gets up on the, he comes to the stage, or he puts his shades on, he walks out, and he sits at the piano, sing, He's that kind of guy.
Yeah.
And Renee, I'm on a video chat.
Hi, Renee.
And oh, she must be in the headphone. Renee, I'm on a video chat. So my wife just walked in. Um, so so that night I'm playing Asia, and I'm doing my thing, like playing the off beats, on beats, on the end of the beats, backward. And Donald, he's sitting there playing ding, and then all of a sudden he couldn't play the bang. And he's going, and then he looked around, yeah, yeah. He couldn't figure out where, where the thing was. And then you know, we took a after the show after that, before we went back on again. The band members, they were like, "Oh man, that was unbelievable! What you did the Asian. That was great." Blah, blah, blah. And then somebody came in and said, "Donald request your presence in his
Oops.
dressing room." I go in there. He's sitting at the piano, upright piano there, and he's playing. And he loves Thelonious Monk. He's a big fan of Thelonious, and he's playing some things. Some Thelonious Monk stuff, and he acted like I wasn't even in the room. So I'm over there making noises and stuff, and he knows that. So he looked around, and I'm like, Donald, I heard you wanted to talk to me about something. He says, just a minute. He's still playing. And then he closed the piano lid and says, yeah, man, that solo tonight, man. That was just unbelievable. That was amazing. I'm like, thanks, Don. Thank you very much. Yeah, but don't ever do that again. I'm like, what? What do you mean? I thought you liked it. Yeah, I loved it, but no, I can't play when you do that. Like I gotta look cool, when I'm playing the keyboard, when I'm, like playing stuff. Like I can't look cool. I can't play that. I can't play the accents if you're doing all that stuff back there. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and that was the only thing he said to me.
Well, that's a good thing then.
And that
That
was
means
the
he was,
only thing he said.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know what happened. Oh, actually, what happened after that? I was supposed to do the studio record, but they kept moving the time around, for us to do it. So
Mm.
for me, by me being as busy as I was at that time, when you say we're gonna do this, 2 weeks in a certain month, then I allow that time, for that schedule to happen.
Is that your phone, Dennis?
Or,
Oh, no.
huh?
No, I heard a weird sound. Sorry. Yeah. Connection's strange.
So I allow the time, uh, a few times to, I had to go back and tell everybody else who I had commitments with, that I had to, cancel or bail or something, or they moved. Some people moved their schedules. But then, it happened a few times, and I just couldn't do it anymore. Yeah.
That's
But it
too
was
bad.
great. I
Yeah.
got the call from them. Well, it's too bad in one way, but great in another way, because, we got Keith playing. Look who's
Yeah.
got the gig now.
Yeah.
Keith is, and he's doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah. Yeah. He's,
You know,
he's well suited. I agree. He's killing that gig for sure. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, he's custom made, custom tailored for that gig.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned Jeff, our hero, who we both knew and loved. You knew him better than I, but um, there's a great story. You know where I'm going with this, and I call it the Jeff Porcaro story, but it's really more of a Carmine story, probably. But could you
Yeah.
tell that story of as best you remembered? I know it was a long time ago, but I think people will get a kick out of it.
Well, yeah. What happened was, I was Jerry and his brother called me up, Long Island Drum Center. They called me up to do a clinic for them, and
Jerry Ricky. Yep.
I agreed to do it. I said, yeah, sure. I'm a new guy. I'm the new guy in town, I guess, and I agreed to do it. But and I had a, you know, I was with, but at the time I was so new. Carl Dustman, I think his name is.
Yeah. Carl
Remember him?
Dustman. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, he was head of artist relations then at that time, and he never heard of it. So when they told when Dennis and his brother told him about me being on the clinic, um, he said no. He canceled me, and then I got a call from uh, Frank Benali and myself. There was
Sorry,
one
you know
other
what
guy, but I can't think of who
it,
that was. But
it
anyway,
cut out. So it was Frankie Benali, Jeff, Carmine, and you and somebody else.
yeah, and I think there was one other person, Frankie
Y-
Benali,
Yeah.
and there was another person. I think there was another person, but anyway, um, what happened was we met in the lobby that morning to go over, and Don Formularo picked us up uh, in a van. Picked us up. We get in the car, and we're in the car or in the van, and we're driving along, and Carmine is telling stories about how great he is, and he said there was only two great drummers. He just realized there's only two great drummers in the world, and that's Buddy Rich and him. And we all laughed. I thought he was joking, and so did a few other people that was in the van thought he was joking. But I think Jeff Porcaro knew him the longest, and he wasn't joking. And because I'm looking at Jeff's over there, Jeff's shoulders moving, he's chuckling over there. And Carmine is like looking up in the air, like telling these stories about Bonham and stuff, and then all of a sudden, Carl goes, "Hey man, I don't know about all that. I gotta get the voice. I don't know about all that, man, but I'm not going on after Chambers." It's like then Carmine turns around and goes off. Who the hell is this Chambers? Heard, keep hearing some things about him. Like he can't be all that great. I'll go on after him, blah blah blah, and with a few choice words. But he's looking at me like as if he thought I was the drum tech or something, somebody.
Yeah.
And he's going off and he's talking, screaming, frothing at the mouth, and then he finally calms down a little bit. And over there, he's on the blind side of Carmine where Carmine couldn't see him. He's over there cracked up. And he every now and then he look at me and he's just really dying. And I had this shock look on my face, like what the hell? What is all this about? And he goes back into telling some Rod Stewart stories, and the Fudge stories, and just that da 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 da. And then Frankie goes, yeah, I think I'm just thought about it. I'm not going on after Dennis either. And then it set him off again. He goes off, and meanwhile Don Farmilero, as we know him, the guy, he's always talking, and like he's the life of the party, Don.
Mr.
But
Upbeat
Don look
guy.
up at the
Yeah.
mirror, and I can see it. Yeah, our eyes met in the mirror, and he's like looked at me and went, and he kept driving. He didn't say a word. That was my first time meeting him. He didn't say a word. So come on, come on, is going off and off and off and ranting and raging, like just saying all kinds of crazy stuff. So now the van pulls up, and it pulls up and pulls out. It was really the van was about to back into the parking space, and Jeff Porcaro takes off running. And Jeff at that time, I remember he used to have this black long leather jacket or coat or something that went down to his ankles or something.
Yeah.
So from the
Yep.
back, he looked like Batman to me because all I saw were these little feet and a cape flopping in the wind, which was his jacket or coat or something, and he's running. And he left me in there with Carmine, right? So, so I'm going like, what the heck? Park the van and I get out and I don't know what to do. I just followed Dom into the building. And when I came through the door, Jeff goes, Chambers, come here. That was great crap, it was a few words. That was
Yeah.
great crap. And I'm like, man, that wasn't funny at all, man. I was like, I really did. I wasn't, didn't meet him officially. And, we were all standing in the lobby and, he was just looking at me. Nobody said, hey, this is Dennis Chambers or this is Carmine. I know who he was. So Jeff goes on, what, you never met him before? I'm like, nah. He says, oh, this is great. This is great. So he said, watch this. Carmine comes, and he's big. I mean, he's huge, well known in that area because he's from there.
Yeah.
And he's got on like these tight spandex pants and a tight shirt. He's got his makeup on, his eyeliner, his hair teased, and he's out there doing the Pope wave to everybody, like Dominus Ominous, please thank you, Dominus. And he comes to the door, and and Carl goes, Carmine, come here, meet Chambers. And Carmine stuck his hand out. Oh man, nice to meet you, man. I'm really confused now because he didn't connect the dots. I was that guy that was in the van that he was looking at when he was cussing me out
Yeah. Yeah.
or having choice words.
Uh,
And I'm like, oh, this is wrong. So anyway, um, so Jeff Porcaro and I were sharing dressing rooms. First, Frank Benali went on. Jeff Porcaro comes on. I come on, and then come on. So I'm in the dressing room. It's my first clinic. I'm gathering my thoughts. What am I going to do? How am I going to set this up? I mean, what is the procedures and just that. And I go out and take a look at some of the guys like Piccaro, who's doing this clinic and which was great. I mean, he sounded phenomenal. I remember. And but he talked through most of his clinic because he felt like everything he did. He didn't think of himself very important. Like an important figure to the drum community.
yeah. I know.
At least he seemed like it that day because he just talked. Like you'll play something and you go like, oh, this is what I got from so and so. This is what I got from Bernard Purdy, or this is I got this from so. And so I'm back in the dressing room. And I'm thinking like, well, you thought about what Jeff had did and a few other guys and some clinics I've seen more before I did my first clinic. And so Carmine, Jeff Porcaro's off, and Jeff's got a little weird thing about the door. He don't respect the door too much. His entrance to a doorway, he kicks it in.
I heard
So
this. Yeah.
I'm sitting there, at the sitting there at the mirror, I'm looking at the mirror, and looking down, thinking, should I do it this way? Boom! Big loud thing. The door, he could do it so hard, the door opened and closed again. It closed again. But before it closed again, he just standing there looking. I'm like, and then he opened the door. This time he opened the door and he just standing there. And I'm looking at him like, what happened? Are we gonna fight now? Or what? I didn't know what was going on. And he comes in and Jeff, when he's up to something or if he's been mischievous, you have this smile, and his lips will curl at the end like the Grinch that stole Christmas. And he's sitting there looking at me with those big glasses. He's like, "When you go out there, man, I want you to kill." I'm like, "Yeah, kill. Yeah, I'm gonna do something." No, man, you know. And he closed the door, and he's giving me a pep talk, like a locker room pep talk. And at the end of it, he's like loud. When you go out there, I want you to fight Kevin. You're gonna go out there and you're gonna give it your best. You gonna like represent? You gonna and all of a sudden I hear, ladies and gentlemen, Dennis Chambers. I'm like, ah! I'm so pumped up, from him. I go out there and I'm playing, kind of stuff, crazies, back and forth. And make a long story short, I went over, I think like a half an hour, 4 minutes because the crowd let me off. But while I was playing, I remember seeing Carmine down the hallway from the stage door. I could see him, and he's signing autographs. And every now and then, I'll do something. I can see his head lift up a little bit. We go back to signing. He's lift up again, signing. It got to the point where he's signing real fast, and then he just let the pen go, and he just ran to the door, and he's standing there in the doorway with his arms out, touching both sides of the door. And Jeff Porcaro is like beneath him, like on his left side, and Jeff is standing there like with the big grin, like he's a proud dad,
Yeah.
So, and I'm looking at Jeff, I'm looking at Carmine, and I'm like, yeah, going on loud. So I'm like doing the sweep, and I turn back and I'm blowing kisses at him, like you do that, so, and so, Jeff comes on, and hold on a second. Jeff comes on. He comes on. I'm sorry. Carmine comes on, and he does some things, and it was funny. He made a statement about Tico Torres because Tico Torres was in the audience and Frankie Banali.
Yeah.
And he said some things that had everybody kind of in questioning it. But I can hear, like somebody way in the back, right by the board, and it sounded like the laughter of the old men on the Muppets.
Yeah.
And you can see the guy running down the aisle. He's trying to get backstage. It was Jeff Porcaro laughing and running, and he tripped and he rolled. He rolled down the aisle, and he just leaned on his back, and he was like tears was like all in his. It's the craziest thing, man. And I'm going like, and I'm sitting there thinking like, I'm feeling sorry, and this is how it's going to be for the rest of my life. It was crazy.
I could hear this story 100 times and it would still be funny every time. Just as funny. Oh
Yeah,
my God.
I had to leave out some things. Some things were not meant for people to hear about that day, but
Right.
it was crazy, man. It was
But
crazy.
the good part of it is that you and Carmine are like friends, and I know you told me he later said something like, "Hey man, I'm sorry I was kind of a dick that day," and you know, which is cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
he's a
And
good guy.
every time I call him after that,
Yeah,
he's a sweetheart, as I
he
found out.
is. He is a sweetheart.
Every time I would see him after that, he would, like, hey man, I apologize for the way I acted and stuff. But I guess at that time, stuff like that happens. Certain people, could be in a different frame of mind. I know sometimes I'm in a different frame of mind. When I'm around people, sometimes
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
that I had to
Yeah.
apologize for my behavior. Just like we all. You know.
Yep. And Joe Franco said, "Never heard this story, but I was at that clinic. Dennis was on fire." Thanks, Joe.
Well,
Yeah.
he should have been in the van with us.
Yeah. Yeah. If he was a Pearl guy, he probably would have been on the bill that day. It was probably, they got, I want to say Joe was probably with Premier in those days, but yeah, that's great. So yeah, Joe was in the audience that day. Um,
Yeah,
the other, I mean, the other, and
what's
not to,
important is
sorry, go ahead.
I said, but I know Carmine remember that's for sure.
Yes. And I don't mean to make you tell a bunch of stories, but there's one other story that you tell it better than I do when we were traveling together. And just so people know, I probably, when I worked for Zildjian, Dennis and I I probably did more clinic tours with Dennis than any of the artists that we had, because he was the most in demand guy, really, frankly. I mean, and I don't know if you remember this, Dennis, but I would contact you around January of every year, and you would tell me I got a week or 2 weeks in April or May or in the fall or whatever. Like, you were so busy, recording and touring with whoever it might be at that time, and you'd block out a week or 2 weeks or however much time we could get from you, and we'd go out and do these clinic tours, and they were amazing. And this was back at a time when, clinics were a big thing for music stores. We'd get hundreds, 500 people in a music store or in a big auditorium on a Tuesday night, Um, and I mean, clinics were a big thing, but also Dennis obviously was a huge draw, and that made a big difference. But anyway, we were on one of these clinic tours. We were in Kansas City, Missouri, and we had a day off. We had arrived from somewhere the day, had been somewhere the night before, flew into Kansas City, had a day off, checked in at our hotel, and then decided to go to a mall to do, kill some time, do a little shopping. And then, if you don't mind, Dennis, I'll let you take it from here. Do you mind? Tell the story.
Yeah, I had to. I had to go to a store, or go somewhere to get some toiletries and stuff, and some hair products. I should say, should mention.
Very
And
important.
John, I told John what I was going to do that day, and John, wanted to go because he had to get some things himself. And I think the place where we were staying, or this certain area where we were staying, there were no cabs out there. They had like car services or something.
Right.
So the hotel hooked us up with a car service to a mall. John had his leather jacket, leather Zilton jacket on, and I had this, some other, like a long coat or something, a suede coat or something. And we get in, and the guy, he's blasting his stereo, and I think the speakers, he only had speakers in the back, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't think he had anything in front. But and I said to John, man, that music's kind of loud. And John asked the driver to turn would he mind turning the stereo down a little bit? And he turned it down. And he kept looking in his rearview mirror, looking at us. And I didn't say nothing. And John says, "Well, yeah, I'm not, but my friend here is a drummer, and he's doing a drum clinic or something." You were explaining something to him like that,
Yeah. Yep.
and then he
Explorers
he
percussion.
kept well, yeah, he was talking, or he allowed John to talk, and then he started talking to us about Neil Peart. Like no, first he says John was trying to get him, and you were telling him about the clinic, that I was going to do the next day, and you're telling him he should come and check it out, this, that, da, da, da. And then the subject got on Neil Peart for some strange reason. And he's like, man, Neil Peart is the greatest drummer in the world, and he's this, he's that, and blah 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 blah. And then he started talking about Neil Peart had a doctor's degree and stuff and that. I remember looking over at you, and I asked you, John, I didn't know Neil had a doctor's degree, and you said, I don't think so. I don't think he had. And I tried to explain to the guy that we don't think that we don't think that was right. That we don't think he had a doctor's degree, and God turned the stereo up on us. So it got to a point. It was like every time he heard something he didn't want to hear, he would blast the stereo, and and um, and it was just weird. So then we finally get to our destination, and we get out, and John asked how much was it, and John paid him, and the guy threw the money. He threw the money back out on the street
I don't remember
and
that.
took off. Like he made a comment and just took off. Yeah, and I was like, you were kind of, you're like a little mad or something. You said, I asked you, well, you're going to pick up the money. He said no. And I refused to pick it up. And I picked up the money and I was trying to give it back to you and you wouldn't take it. And, you were quiet. When you get quiet, I know, you were not too thrilled about what just happened. But
Yeah.
he drove off and we laughed about it in the mall, talked about it a little bit, what happened. And the next day, um, we get there at sound check, line check stuff, and putting the drums together. And there was some guy banging on the door like crazy, just banging on the door.
Right.
And the head guy, or the guy that was running the drum department, I guess he was there. He went to the door and he came back and he asked us that we take a ride somewhere to a mall or something. We talked to some guy who was a musician who drove the car, and I think you said yeah, John. I think you said yeah,
Yeah.
and he said, well, the guy's at the door and he wants to come in. He wants he had something to say to me, and you said no, don't let him in.
We did.
And meanwhile, I'm standing there with two cymbal stand tops, and I'm like, yeah, let him in, because if anything weird goes down, there's going to be a serious drum solo on this guy. He comes in, he apologized, and he told me the story. He says, "Man, um, how wrong he was for doing what he did, and he apologized like crazy." And
Yeah.
then he said that when he got back to his apartment, his drummer buddy lived over top of him, and he's bragging about what he did to us, and they're laughing on the phone. And then his buddy goes like, he said he was doing a drum clinic or whatever that store name was. He goes, yeah, he said he was gonna be down there. He says, and you don't remember his name? He says, no. He says, what describe him? He says, well, he described you, and then he said he described me. And his buddy goes like, a black guy with like hair with a hat on. He says, yeah, he had a hat on. Yeah, I think he had long hair or something. He goes, and then he says, it's kind of stocky, kind of bit. He goes, yeah, it's kind of stocky. And he says, hold on a second. And the guy was like sitting in his apartment holding on. And then there was a knock on the door, he said. And he said, when he opened the door, his
Yeah.
pal shoved the videotape in his face. Like, is this him? And he goes like, yeah, that's him. And he started whacking him on the head with the videotape like you fool. Put the tape in and he saw it. Like, oh my God. And he
Yeah.
realized he had to come down and apologize. But I mean,
He,
we were thinking like, man, like sometimes it's nice to if you sit and just like listen. Sometimes you can learn a lot from
that's right.
stories because I mean, right there, he had the both of us, and we are trying to tell him we just saw Neil at the Buddy Rich Memorial,
Right. That's right.
and we just tell him we saw him, and I was trying to tell him you knew Neil, and he could have gotten like a lot of important information from that, but he didn't.
He just would
He
talk,
didn't.
like you said,
He just only was,
and turn the radio up. And he
yeah.
ended
I
up
mean, he was
staying for
talking
the
like
clinic. Yeah. And I
yeah,
remember
yeah,
looking over at him during the clinic, and he was, like that look that everybody has when they see you play for the first time. He had that and then some, and he was really humble and cool afterward. Like you said, he was,
yeah,
very apologetic about being kind of a jerk. But overall, it was at Explorers Percussion in Kansas City, Missouri. If anybody's wondering, if Wes Faulkner is watching this, he might remember this. This was about 30 years ago, Dennis, maybe 90, early 90s, I think
yeah,
93, maybe. Yeah.
yeah.
But that, and I think it's a great story. Like you just said too, if you just, God gave us two ears and one mouth. And, sometimes listening is the best advice, just not saying anything and just, you know, anyway,
Yeah.
that's a,
Sometimes you get a lot. You can learn a lot by from listening to other people if you just allow them to talk.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Do you, one other thing, we don't have to tell a story about this, but I was thinking about another, I mean, we did a million of these clinic tours, but I remember there was a Zildjian day in Mexico City, like a Zildjian Pearl day. It was all Zildjian Pearl guys. And it was you and Mike Mangini, and there might have been some
Oh,
guys, some Mexican guys on the bill. Do you remember this? When Mike got
I remember
sick?
that. I
Yeah.
remember that. Yeah.
I was thinking about Mangini recently, and I remembered that particular day because he's such a maniac anyway. And he was eating all that spicy food. Do you remember that? He was just drinking wine and
Yeah.
tequila.
And then
Anyway,
he was eating fish, and there was like not even the water was nowhere near town. You know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the long story short is by the end of we had this, the guys all played that day, amazing drum festival. Dennis killed it. Mike killed it as usual. Mike Mangini. And so they take us out to dinner to this really nice restaurant. I think we were like sitting outside. It was like a nice spring night in Mexico. So it was warm. We're sitting out having this great dinner. And there was, yeah, like you said, there was some fish like out on a open platter. But Mike had been, Mike was just like eating everything in sight, I think, just to be a maniac that he was. And halfway through the dinner, he's just kind of going like, uh, I gotta go back to the hotel. It's terrible to say, but we were just all laughing. That's all I could
Right.
do was laugh.
Even he was laughing a little bit,
I
until
know
he got.
you.
Till he got
Yeah, yeah. It was, and because I think at that point too, this had to be almost 20 years ago, and Mike was still kind of a newcomer. You know what I mean? Like to the scene, so to speak. So it was just kind of like he was. I don't know. It was like he was like our little brother. You know what I mean? That we had to sort of look after in those situations. But oh, it was funny. He would laugh about this now. I know he would think it was funny.
he played. I remember he played unbelievable on those clinics. I remember.
Yeah,
Remember he played some Led Zeppelin tracks, and it sounded like John Bonham.
yeah, yep,
It was the actual track, and I was sitting there trying to figure out where did he get those drumless mixes, but it wasn't. It
right.
was him playing over top of Bonham, and he had it down so well, it sounded like Bonham, but it was him.
It was him. You're right. You're right. The
It was
tracks were
amazing.
that actually there, but he was so locked into it, and he had the feel so right that it sounded just like, yeah, it sounded like it was like him playing the track. Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Every
yeah.
time Bonham would hit a cymbal, he hit the cymbal with the same exact way, same exact time.
Yeah,
It was great. I
yeah.
mean, you didn't hear Bonham at all.
Right. He did that at a Modern Drummer Festival too later. Same thing, and it was pretty
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, yeah. Mike's a
Yeah, I was
good
impressed. I
guy.
was really impressed. Yeah.
Funny. We were talking about Armin Zildjian earlier when I mentioned, at the Buddy Rich show, he was sitting. Um, a bunch of us were sitting there watching the show together, and I remember he was floored by everybody, but I remember in particular he was really knocked out by you, and he must have seen you play before that, but anyway, his birthday is coming up February the 18th. He would have turned 100 years old this year. Um, and it's just to say that I miss him. I know you do, and he loved you, and we all had a lot of fun laughs together, and he always looked forward to when you'd visit because he knew there'd be fun stuff to talk about and laugh about. And that's all I'll say, but he was a fun guy to be around. So happy birthday, Armin.
Okay. Happy birthday. I truly
Yeah,
miss him, man. Like we all do.
I,
We
I know.
truly miss him.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
He and Lenny.
And Lenny, I know, man. Yeah, I know. As Adam Nussbaum would say,
Do
two
you
in a
remember that
row.
time with Lenny? Yeah.
Sorry, that
Do
time
you
with
remember
Lenny.
that time with Lenny? We were, we were, I think we were in New York. I think, and it was either there or Boston. But we went out to a Chinese restaurant. Remember that,
I wasn't there, but I've heard this story. But it was like you.
John? You remember that?
I wasn't with you guys, Dennis. It was before I. It was maybe a year before I joined the company, but I heard the story. It was in Boston,
Oh man,
and it
he
was
yeah he got a whole bunch of us together, and we went to a restaurant and we ordered up everything in on the menu, you know, Lenny style, because
yes,
he could throw down. So
yeah,
it was the table was like it was not an empty spot on the table with just food on it, And at the end of the night, he went to pull out his card. Oh, and every time the waiter would come around and take an order, and Lenny would mimic him, it's like, we all crack up, and this goes on the whole night, And when it came time to pay the bill, he whipped out the card, and the lady says, "Oh, we don't take credit card." he's he's laughing like, very funny, because he thought they were getting back at him from, like
yeah,
cracking on him.
yeah,
And he says, "No, no, no, sorry, sir, we don't take credit card." And then, and then he gets up, he get up from away from the table, and he's got the waiter, one of the waiters by his shoulder, and you can see him making deals, I guess, like maybe making a symbol deal, like, look,
yeah.
I keep a symbol of you, so tomorrow when I go, I work for Soldier, I don't know what he said, but
Well, Therese
yeah,
Therese Demuzio is watching right now, and she said it was hi Therese, and she said it was Chinatown in Boston. She was probably there because she
yeah,
was working for the company, and the story that I heard exactly is that Lenny said, "Well, sir, I'm with the Zildjian company, and these are my artists. These are some very famous drummers right here, and if you can just send me the invoice." Well, send me an invoice and we'll pay, we'll pay the bill. And the guy said, are you crazy? Like, he's like, well, and he said, he said something like, you know, here's my credit card. He said, we don't take credit cards. He said, the guy said, then you're going to have to take up a collection. And I think all you guys started taking out your cash
yeah.
and yeah. Uh,
Yeah, and Lenny's like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." But
yeah.
meanwhile, we were all like trying to figure out the tip and all kind of stuff.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
good.
That's
So I
that's
promise
hilarious.
I'll pay you guys tomorrow. I'll send you a check.
That's another
But he was
classic story.
always he and Armin was always keeping us laughing about something.
Yeah.
Those two guys, they were like serious party guys. Like they were the life of the party.
Always. I know. I know. You could just sit there and just and just take it all in and laugh.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
man.
Some of those food fights.
Yes.
You can sit in a restaurant and all of a sudden the food fight break out at the freaking table.
Yeah. They just start
Throwing
chucking
biscuits.
rolls at each other. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man. We had Scott Pistol Crockett asked who are some of the drummers you enjoyed listening to? I'm guessing he means like your influences, which you mentioned early on, like Billy and Tony and um, Clyde.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Also,
like Billy, Tony, Clyde, Stubblefield, Zigaboo,
yeah,
David Gabaldi, Jackie Jeanette, Lenny White, uh, who I talked to last night, um, Peter Erskine. I really enjoyed his work with the Weather Report, and also with Steps Ahead
yeah,
and
yeah,
various other groups. I heard him play when it was just phenomenal. Um, but I think I'm a big fan of everybody and anybody that have something to say on that instrument,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
they're my favorites. Yeah.
I know that. I know because
I mean, even
we've
like
talked
Don
about
Brewer
that too.
from Grand Funk.
Right. I was going to say, I remember
Yeah,
you were a big Don Brewer and the guy from Three Dog Night, Floyd Sneed. I remember you telling me, like, we talked about him as
Steve, yeah,
being a great drummer, great influence, like in the rock world and John Bonham, obviously. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, this has been
like
great.
everybody. I mean, Pink Floyd.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Isn't it funny when you think about it? Like, for me, it's easier to name guys that weren't some kind of an influence. I think the older I get, the more I just, I can find something about everybody that I think is something great about them. You know what I mean? Something that, um, when I listened to Pink Floyd as a kid, I didn't appreciate, um, his playing as much as I did later on, and certainly do now. The sort of, it's simple but really tasteful. Um, a lot like Ringo. It's not as simple as you might think it is too. There's
Yeah,
definitely, uh, you know, something going on there. So,
yeah, and then also not to mention him last, but Bernard Purdy was a
oh
big influence on me too,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it was great to know that he's from Maryland. I didn't even know he was from Maryland.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's from Elton, Maryland. Yeah,
Hmm. Wow.
and Steve Gadd. I don't did I mention Steve Gadd? Steve Gadd is one of my favorites, and Vinnie Colaiuta is one of my favorites too.
Yep. And Gary Husband, I remember you would always mention
Yeah,
Gary Husband.
yeah, Gary Husband. I have a lot of favorites, man, but
Yeah,
like the guys who I mentioned, they're the ones that really, especially with Billy, Lenny, uh, um, Jackie Jeanette, Billy Cobham, to Billy, Lenny, Jack, Roy Haynes, Elvin, uh, Gad. Uh, these are all the guys and Zigaboo Mona Lisa and Clive. Those are the guys for me.
yeah, yeah.
And then like then you got Marvin Smitty Smith. He's another guy too. I really loved it. If he's playing anywhere, I have to go see it because you
Absolutely.
just never
Yeah,
know where he's going to come out, man. And he
yeah.
do it with a smile.
Yes. He is ferocious, Smitty. He is. He's, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he's like serving your head to you. Here's your head with a smile. He just blows your
Yeah,
head.
yeah. And I was thinking about how you in turn have influenced so many great drummers of today, that would readily tell you that, and I think Smitty would tell you that he was influenced by you, and he's more like your contemporary, more your, he's a couple of years younger than you, um, but like the cats that are out there today, I won't say they owe a lot to you, but they would certainly say you were a big influence. And if you listen to guys like Aaron Spears and Gerald Hayward and um, Ronald Bruner, all those guys, I mean they've all definitely, whether they realize it or not, have had an influence by what you've done, and that's a pretty cool thing to have kind of influenced another generation the way you have. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm just thankful to be in a situation where the musicians or the leader would allow me to do what I do. They didn't sit there and try to tell me how to do it, when to do it, and how to, when to breathe and when not to breathe. Like like the John McLaughlins, the John Scofields, groups like Peace, Parliament Funkadelic. I mean, they didn't sit there and try to tell you, like how to play the drums. And thanks to that, it allowed me to express myself where other people can hear, what I was thinking or
that's
to feel
yeah,
what I was feeling at that time.
That's
and
a
not too many players have a chance to do that, because they get hooked into these bands, and you gotta, like the band leader or the guitar player or another musician is going to try to tell you how to play like their favorite artist or their favorite drummer is. And what they don't know is, like sometimes if you hire the right guy, you shouldn't have to tell them anything.
right.
You shouldn't have
Yep.
to. You give them a little, like direction, but you shouldn't have to tell him how to play the drums or how to play his music. Because after all, if like for instance, if you hired Steve Gadd, you're not going to sit there and tell Steve Gadd how to play the track.
Right.
Steve Gadd is going to come and listen to it and put the glue to it. And the same thing with Miles with Tony and Miles with all the drummers he had up to a certain point. Try to imagine like John Coltrane would sit there and try to tell Elvin how to play the drums for Christ's sakes.
Right.
But
Right.
yet you get into some of these bands, they do that. They feel like they have to tell you how to play.
Yeah. Yep. But I put you in that same category of like Tony and like when somebody hires you to play on a record, they know what they're getting, and that's why they're hiring you. That speaks volumes, I think, for you because they're familiar with your work, and I mean, we're in a crazy situation right now, but I can remember when you were working just nonstop, one record and project after another, after another, after another. And you look at a band, look at Carlos Santana, who you played with for, I mean, 10 years or more.
Like
I don't
12
know,
years. Yeah.
12 years. Okay. Yeah, I mean, and Carlos, I'm guessing is maybe not the easiest, band leader to work for, but he hired you because he knew who you were, how you played, and he wanted you as his drummer.
Yeah, Carlos was, he's really, really interesting guy because he always listened to a lot of music, and he's constantly listening to new things, and trying to get new sound out of that band,
Mm,
and he was always uh, asking us, well, telling us what he hears, and try to get us to he was trying to get us to do what he heard was in his mind, you know.
mhm.
And that was sort of a challenge to me, sometimes, try to figure
Yeah,
out what he's hearing and what he wants, you know. But
absolutely. Yeah.
sometimes you give up yourself, to do that. I mean, yeah, I remember some nights he would, he would want me to play more, a lot more than what I was doing, and I just couldn't hear it that way because, I heard, from the rehearsals up until we're somewhere in the middle of the tour, I'm hearing more of it's a groove oriented thing, and he wanted more uh, like firecrackers going on, like a lot of splashing, crashing and stuff,
Mm,
and to me, like music is like having a conversation. Um, if you're having a decent conversation, like where you you hear a person speaking or is talking, and you sit there and listen to him to understand what he's saying, and that way when you answer, or if you have an answer, if you answer, you can answer intelligently, and that way both guys can understand what you're saying. But if you got two people yelling and nobody's listening,
yeah. Yeah.
you get out of that. You just got two confused, angry people. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I
It's
was
a good
looking
way
at
to
it like,
describe it.
yeah, I was looking at it like with Carl. I had a great percussion section, with Carl and Raul, who, I mean, they were just two amazing players, and pretty much trying to stay out of their way, and also try to make some kind of music sense with them as well, and they were doing the same thing for me,
Mhm.
and oh, better yet, what I'm trying to say is when I walk into a situation, just like everybody else, I guess, is when I walk into a situation, it's not about Dennis Chambers. It's about how do we make this work?
Right.
And
Yep.
when you walk into, a bandstand, or you walk into a studio. I mean, for instance, I mean, if you're a reader and you walk into a studio and the guy hang your chart, it don't have your name on that chart. It just says drums. That's the only thing you see on it, other than the notes. Drums,
Yeah.
meaning that whoever can cut this, make it feel great. So when I walk into a studio, just like like Anthony Jackson, for instance, like Anthony's another one of those type of guys. Marcus Miller, those guys, they just walk into a studio and they can play anything, read anything, and adapt to anything. Gad was famous for it. Gad was like a
Yeah.
comedian, a chameleon. I'm sorry, he's like a chameleon. Um, where you drop him in anything and he'd sound like he wrote the freaking thing. Peter Erskine is another one like that.
Yeah. Yep.
Peter is like phenomenal. He you put him in anything and he sounded great. But there's a few other musicians. Marvin is like that. Marvin Smitty Smith. He's like that.
Mm. Hmm.
Um, Lenny White is like that. Vinny's
Yeah.
definitely like that.
And I would say you're like that too. I would say you're like that too.
Well,
Because,
but see, I try to model myself after that kind of thing. Where I mean, I always had. I grew up with a lot of music around me, and I thought to become a great musician, you have to learn all those styles of music. Even if you don't like them, at least understand why it works.
mm-hmm.
Why funk music works, why rock music works, why soul music works, all that kind of stuff. And play it. And then if you don't like it, at least you have an understanding of the reason why you don't like it.
Right.
Instead of saying I hate it, and somebody asks you, well, why you hate it, and you can't explain it. If you can't explain it, that don't mean you don't hate it. It just means that you don't understand it.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes playing that, kind of being forced to play something, you appreciate it. You go, yeah, you know what? This is actually, I'm not hating playing this as much as I thought I was going to.
Yeah.
I've, it's another side of it too. It's, yeah, no, that's really wise words, Dennis. That's why you're a
And I think
doctor.
Dr. Yeah, man. But I think that's the reason. One of the reasons why I guess I ended up doing what I did is because when I walk in and they know I'm not going to turn it into the Dennis Chambers show, whatever that is, but I'm just going to come in and try to like find out what the music called for, and play what I think, also with the direction of what the band leader or the writer, what he wants.
Yeah. Yep.
If he wants me to get a little bit more intense, I'll get a little bit more intense. If he wants me to just lay back in the groove, I'll do that. I have no problem.
And for everybody watching, that's really key what Dennis just said, because that's your job as a drummer, as a musician, when you're hired to play with a band leader on a record or a tour. You're there to support him or her, not to be the star of the show. And that you're hearing it from Dennis Chambers. So, I mean, it's obvious to a lot of people, but I think some people don't quite understand that. That's how you keep working, right? When you say Dennis, I mean, isn't that the reason why guys like you and Vinny and Steve and everybody get hired all the time,
I mean, because like I've seen some shows where the drummer, on the marquee it says that person, but you go see the show and the drummer's back there taking the drum solo behind the music, and then you hear a week later he's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Sounded great chop wise, for the drummers. Every drummer that was in the room, he sounded phenomenal. But to everybody else, it was, and to the artist, it just sounded horrible.
Yeah. Yep.
You know,
I know. I know. Again, I think it's one of those things we keep getting my water, excuse me. One of those things that we learn as we get older too. You know, even as a drummer, for me, going out to see a band, unless I'm there to see, you know, an artist where the drums are really featured. If I go see you, or if I go see Vinny with Herbie Hancock or something, and or Steve with his own band or something. Even then, though, he's not even really that featured. But when you see a
Yeah.
guy just overplaying, it becomes like, oh man, it's you're stepping all over these other people here. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, for me, one thing I learned, when you give some space, when space is needed, or you let space happen, sometimes you find yourself going down another alley.
yeah,
Therefore, it's like, like every time I've seen drummers who, every time there's space, they got to fill it up. They got to fill it up. Like 2 bar space, they got to fill it up. Um,
yeah,
Now you becoming selfish because there's other people on that bandstand other than you who, if you give them a chance, or if you lay back sometimes, like a keyboard player or bass player, they can play something that may take you down another alley. But you never hear that. You never go down that alley if you back there chopping it up, the whole freaking time.
yeah, yep,
I
exactly.
learned that by being on the road with P-Funk, Parliament Funkadelic. Because we had to play the same music every night, for years, but we never played it the same. I mean, the arrangements were the arrangements, but
Yeah,
in those arrangements, man, we could play whatever we wanted.
that's cool. Yeah,
So, and we just, I mean, we had a ball. We look forward, to seeing each other on every tour. When I was with Scofield and John McLaughlin, it was the same way. It was like I look forward to seeing those guys and just do some playing, just to see what we were going to come up with next. And I said, we get together and we see what we were going to do,
yeah,
not to see
yep,
what I'm going to do to this gig.
right. And it's not even something you have to force yourself to even be thinking. It's a natural thing because it's the music. It's the love of just being in this with all these players that um, yeah, that's a beautiful thing when you reach that point as a musician, that it becomes about the whole unit, just what we're going to do, not just what I'm going to do. I'm going to start this first tune and I'm going to be, you know dig my shit. Yeah,
I mean, and in some cases, like when you listen to, when you listen to like, Tony Williams with Miles, or Tony Williams with Herbie, you know, I mean, he's playing a lot of things, but that music lend itself to do that,
right,
where he can do some things. He's not playing crazy stuff the whole time, but he's still swinging the band too.
right. Yeah,
And so what I'm trying to say is, like, you pick your battles when you play in music. If you're a guy who have a lot of chops, well, you don't have to display your chops the whole time. You just pick and choose, when you can do it. But don't sit there and try to try to play the whole night, because you overplay the gig.
yep,
You know? And then by if you're thinking about music that way, you don't even get a chance to feel it. And the feeling part is the most important thing about being on the bandstand. You got to feel the music.
yeah.
That's why when
Amen.
you listen to what draws the listener to buy records is about what they heard and what they felt when they heard it. And if they like what they heard, if they like what they felt, they go buy the record.
Yeah,
And then there's some music is just, like ear candy records, where it's a lot of blowing and a lot of playing, and that's great too, as long as that's what the band is about.
yeah, yep.
But if you sit there and play behind a singer and you're back there soloing, something's not going to work out.
Yeah,
If you sitting there, you're playing in the funk band and you're back there chopping it out, something's not going to work out.
yeah, yep, exactly.
It's like, try to imagine. I mean, with me, me playing with Parliament Funkadelic, and then I'm back there, doing the Dennis Chambers Clinic thing wouldn't have worked out. It's playing with Steely Dan, and you see me back there in clinic mode. That wouldn't have worked out.
Exactly. Yeah, like you say, you gotta pick your battles, man. You gotta know when those times are there to do that, and know that otherwise you're there to support the music, play a great time, have it feel great. Everybody and everybody's
Yeah.
committed to the same thing. It all sounded good and feeling good. Yep.
I wish I could see what you're seeing there. I mean, with comments, I bet some people's got some crazy comments.
Yeah. Are you watching it on Facebook? It's hard to
Who,
keep up
me?
with.
No.
No. Uh, see if I can catch a question here. Everybody, many people are agreeing with what you're saying yes, yes, yes. Um, okay, so this is good. Anthony Anthony Amadeo, good guy who I see a lot when I do these, all the time actually when I do these live from my drum rooms. He said, I once spoke to Carter Beauford. I asked him who blows his mind. He said, Dennis Chambers. And he said, do they know each other? And the answer is yes, they do. Carter is a huge fan of
Yeah.
Dennis's. You guys are old friends, right? From when he had his
Well,
fusion band.
we're not old friends, but we go way back. I think the first time I met Carter, he was playing with a band called Secrets,
Yeah, yeah.
and his bass player, and man, I mean, I didn't know I was going to be meeting the great Carter Beauford at that time. Look at him now; he's like the guy's phenomenal. And, I
Yeah.
mean, he's a real sweetheart guy too. So like, real nice guy,
Super nice guy. Yeah.
and very underrated. I must add, he's very underrated too. A lot of drummers don't know him. There's a lot of drummers that know him, and there's a lot of drummers that don't know him.
Mm, yeah.
Very underrated, man. A great player and a great person as well. Most importantly, he's a great person.
Yeah, he really is. He's a sweetheart. Well, Dennis, we're closing in on 2 hours. So I think we'll wrap it up in a second, but um, I just want to say thank you for doing this. I knew the time was going to fly by. I feel like we just barely scraped the surface, but um, Ray Levere is asking, can you
And
ask him about
we get it.
what's that?
Ask about what?
Ray Levere
I
said, can
say
you ask him
we
about
did good.
keeping it clean? Yeah, we did keep it clean. We said we would. We did. We could have really taken it to another place and we didn't. So good for us. No, Ray asked about believing in yourself, your ability, and how that helped you out in your life, like having confidence and believing in your ability. That'll be the last question for Ray. Any comments or thoughts on that,
No,
on
I
just
mean,
how you?
I well, I mean, one thing about me is like I always the most important thing to me was like I always try to be honest with myself every time I sit down and play, or just being in life, just try to be honest with myself. But when I sit and play, I know what I can do and what I can't do, and when I practice, when I used to practice, I used to, try to play things that I didn't know or things that struck me odd. And once I accomplished those things, then I knew if I can do that, then I'm okay to do other things, or playing music, for instance, other people's music.
Mm,
Um, and that gave me the confidence where I can just walk in and 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 also with the band member or the band leader would allow me to do what I do, and I just did that. I was confident to do that. Um, but I think that had a lot to do. Had a lot to do with me just being honest with myself, knowing that what my limitations were at that time, and even now.
that yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, yeah, yep, that's great. Well, everybody, thank you for watching.
I mean, because like
This has been. Oh, sorry, Dan. I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
I was going to say, so, for like right now, for instance, I mean, thanks to COVID, I used to play drums, and now I just play the couch now, and But once they open up, I guess I'll become a drummer again. I guess.
Oh, I would bet on that. Yeah, a busy drummer,
Yeah,
busy working drummer.
yeah. Knock on some wood. Hope somewhere.
All right. Well, this has been great. Thank you, my friend. Um, don't go anywhere, Dennis. I'm going to end the live stream. We'll say goodbye to
Thank you, Johnny.
everybody.
It's great to see you.
Great to see you too. And hold on just one second. Everybody, thanks for watching. We're going to end the live stream. Um, really appreciate it. Lots of great questions. Dennis, you want to say anything before we end the broadcast?
I just want to say, hopefully, everybody mask up and stay safe.
Love it. Good advice. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon. Episode 20 with Dennis Chambers over and out. Be back at you soon.